From a curbside vlog yesterday talking about Derek Chauvin having been shivved or shanked 22 times in prison. Derek Chauvin, the man who was convicted of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter in the death of George Floyd, was in the law library in prison. He was shanked 22 times, stabbed 22 times. Back to a car vlog, because there's something I got to get to. Like, when I see a video and I say, oh my goodness, this is the worst video I've ever seen, it requires immediate commentary. Tish James, the New York State Attorney General, who has been persecuting Trump for the last, I think they're on 10 weeks of trial now, because Tish, at the beginning of this Trump persecution before New York nipple judge Angeron, was doing daily video updates like your 2 minutes of hate straight out of 1984 on Twitter. 2 minutes in which she would summarize, highly inaccurately in my humble opinion, what had gone on in that trial. 2 minutes every day, and I think it got a little too cumbersome, too time-consuming after 20 some odd days. Now Tish has moved to weekly summaries, which are just as outrageously inaccurate a summary of what actually transpired before nipple New York Judge Angeron, his girlfriend Allison Greenfield, in the most politicized, corrupted persecution in my lifetime, which is going on 45 years now. Okay, you all know what's going on in the New York persecution. Tish James is going after Trump on the basis that he fraudulently inflated the value of his assets so that he could pay more in insurance or procure beneficial interest rates from the banks who were so, babe in the woods naive. They just relied on Trump's evaluations of his own properties and gave him beneficial interest rate on loans. It's nuts. There's no victim. And now we know that the banks themselves are saying we would have halved Trump's own evaluations and still given him a loan because we were vying for his business, as I'd like to say astutely observed after Ivanka Trump's testimony a couple of weeks ago. This week, the bank came out and said, yes, we would have given him the loans anyhow. We basically say, oh, he says it's worth whatever. We have that, and we'll still give him the loans because we wanted his business. He was a whale in the industry, as they use the term whale in a good sense. Tish James put out her weekly 2 minutes of hate summary yesterday. What day is it today? Sunday? 2 days ago. It's preposterous, and I'll play it now.
Today marked the end of the 9th week of our trial against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and other defendants. 9
weeks of trial in a victimless crime that is trumped up, bogus charges, pun intended. Tish James campaigned to become Attorney General off persecuting Trump. She referred to him as an illegitimate president, suggested that he was laundering money from Russia because allegedly domestic banks wouldn't give him any loans.
I'm running for Attorney General because I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president. In addition to that, the office of Attorney General will continue to follow the money because we believe that he's engaged in a pattern and practice of money laundering the money from foreign governments here in New York State, and particularly related to his real estate holdings.
Well, my goodness, that legal theory checked out about as well over time as her latest legal theory, which was that the poor itty-bitty banks got denied profits that they would have otherwise made had they charged the accurate interest rates, had Trump properly evaluated his own business, which now is no longer the case either. But let's just keep going with this wonderful work of Orwellian art.
This week, we heard testimony from a Trump Organization executive who falsely claimed the court-appointed monitor overseeing the company had found no evidence of fraud. But the monitor reported that she had found $40 million in undisclosed cash transfers, and that the Trump Organization repeatedly produced incomplete or inaccurate financial information.
Oh my goodness, the Trump Organization produced incomplete financial information? What is it now? The Department of Defense has failed its audit for the last 10 years in a row?
Real-time fact check, my mistake. It's the Pentagon has failed its 6th audit in a row. Oh, silly me. Carry on, people, carry on.
We are going to persecute based on what Tish James says is incomplete information. Of course, she's going to think it's incomplete information. She is hell-bent on determining fraud, so she already sees fraud, and the absence of fraud is going to be the evidence of fraud for Tish. Spoiler alert, no insurance company claimed fraud, no bank claimed fraud, only Tish James and New York nipple judge Angeron summarily found evidence of fraud.
The Trump Organization is now subject to increased oversight to keep them from breaking the law again.
To keep the Trump Organization from breaking the law.
Again.
for emphasis. So dramatic. And the only reason that anyone can say that they broke the law and that there was fraud was because New York nipple judge Angeron, on summary motion, came to the conclusion that Trump fraudulently overstated the value of Trump Mar-a-Lago in the order of, what did he say, 1,000 to 2,000%? Because he said it was only evaluated by the county appraiser at $18 to $27 million. Therefore, Trump lied when he said it was worth $700 million. Amazing.
The defendants then call witnesses from Deutsche Bank who work with Donald Trump on loans for Trump Chicago, Doral, and the old post office. And one could not recall any details.
One could not recall any details, and the other said, yeah, we would have given him the loan anyhow because he's a whale in the industry and we wanted his business. The preferential interest rates were not the result of fraud. It was the result of us fighting for his business, and we still made tens of millions of dollars off of it. But Tish James is always looking out for the little people.
The big banks.
Another testified that he expected his clients to provide him with truthful information.
Whoop-de-doo.
What might he have said? Yeah, I expect my clients to provide me with truthful information. Okay. Oh my goodness, it's just, everything is so sinister the way she's doing this, presenting it to what I think is still an empty room, like she is the most important person on earth. She is not wearing any clothes, proverbially speaking, and the internet and commentators like myself are revealing to the world that the emperor has no clothes. And I don't want to think about that anymore because now I just immediately went to nipple judge Angeron.
The Trump's main point of contact at the bank told us that she had never looked at the fraudulent statements of financial condition at the center of our case.
Trump's major point of contact admitted that she never looked at the purportedly, allegedly fraudulent statements that are at the center of the prosecution's case. It's kind of hard to argue fraud when the alleged victim of the fraud didn't even look at the documents that were the purported basis of the fraud. You haven't thought this through, Tish. You have not thought this through.
And even the defendant's star real estate expert admitted that it is not acceptable to lie to banks.
Can you believe this? He admitted it's not acceptable to lie to banks. What was the question? Is it okay to lie to banks? No, it's not acceptable to lie to banks.
Guilty.
This morning, the defense claimed the judge had never ruled that Donald Trump committed fraud. In fact, that is exactly what the judge ruled 2 months ago.
Yep, that's exactly what the judge ruled 2 months ago, because this is a kangaroo court prosecution where the judge, on summary motion, came to the conclusion that as a matter of law, there was fraud. No need for a trial. The next 9 weeks that we've had here was only to determine the extent of the fraud and the culpability and the quantum. No, the fraud has already been adjudicated, and that is normal to say, given the fact that we are now entering the 10th week of the trial. Wow. It used to be that you would be found guilty after the trial, not before the trial, but leave it to nipple judge New York Angeron to use those tools that he has, to bypass every aspect of substantive law, to abuse of the tools and procedure that he has to come to the conclusion of guilt before the trial is over. The judge came to the conclusion of fraud over 2 months ago, and now the defense is making their case, and this doesn't strike even the most lefty, bluest of liberals as being somewhat problematic in a purportedly free and democratic society.
And now that the defendants have concluded another week of their defense, the truth could not be any clearer. Donald Trump committed repeated and persistent fraud, and we will continue to show the truth in court as we conclude our case.
The truly amazing thing right now is the pivot yet again by Tish James, because but this is getting even weirder and weirder, by Tish James, Letitia James, in that at the beginning when she was running for office, she was saying Trump is an illegitimate president, he's laundering money. She was suggesting that he was laundering money because she had come to the conclusion that domestic banks wouldn't lend him money. Well, that turned out to be wildly false, so she has to pivot a little bit to say, oh, okay, so he's not laundering money from Russia. The banks are in fact lending him money, but he must have lied to the banks. In the earlier stages of her 2 minutes of hate, she once said that Trump defrauded the banks out of what they would have made had they charged accurate interest rates based on what she says is the accurate assessment of the property. Had he properly valued his property, they would have charged him a less favorable interest rate, and Trump denied the banks, enriched himself in what he would have otherwise paid to the banks in interest rates in the order of $168 million, even though the banks made 40 some odd million dollars in interest regardless, and wanted his business.
By lying about his net worth, Donald Trump and the Trump Organization were able to get these loans for much better terms than they should have. The banks thought Donald Trump had more money than he did, so they offered him loans at lower interest rates. As a result, over the years, the Trump Organization derived unfair financial benefits from banks alone in the amount of $168 million.
She had predicated this lawsuit on Trump having defrauded the banks and enriched himself in interest rates that he would have otherwise had to pay but didn't. Now that we've got the bank coming in the defense and saying, yeah, we would have halved his evaluations and still lent him the money, now Tish has to say, doesn't even matter what the banks had to say, he lied. There is no victim in this alleged fraudulent scheme. This is a political persecution of the highest order, weaponizing all aspects of government, from the attorney general to the corrupt court system to the corrupt appellate system, and the citizenry just sits by and say, my goodness, so many bad things happening to Trump, he must be guilty of something. Hogwash!
Hogwash.
The system is running amok, and it is up to the lowly people sitting in their cars, shaking their fist at the clouds to say at some point enough is enough, and these people need to be voted out of office, impeached out of office, ethics complaint filed against judges who are acting corruptly. And I think we're getting there. But that is my commentary on Letitia James's latest 2 minutes of hate. It's resulted in an 8-minute, 9-minute rant in a car. Everybody, if you like what I do, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Am I schwitzing? I'm schwitzing like a pig, although pigs don't schwitz. This is it. I got to turn the air conditioning back on. If you like what I do, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you on the next vlog and on the next stream. Peace.
A man who trusts nobody is apt to be the kind of man nobody trusts. And yes, I'm talking about Letitia James, not Donald Trump.